Right. So holding now on Kuf Tzadik Tes, we saw that the Inyan HaYerida was Lefi Oifen HaLoa Va'ilui B'Techaim Pnimis HaSeichel and Davke Masha HaYediyah Va'imach HaSeichel Hu B'Yesa שזה הפלואה, זה כוח הפלואה, כן הוא עניין הירידה בריבי הסחלקס ובריבי גילוי הפרטים שזה מקבלים in the גילוי הסייכו. And we brought the dogma at the end of the previous session, the kof pshuta and the kof kefufa. And the point being that the kof pshuta was really the same os as the kof kefufa. I'm sorry, the kof, the kof kefufa and the kof pshuta are the same ois. But the inyan of the kof, that's the inyan of the kivuts and the stimus in the helem ha-helem, well, we saw that was the inyan ha-aloha. And particularly we learn according to the Oven HaBeis that that's Pater Kushi and Pater Pilpul. That's the inyan from Aliyah behelem ha-helem, and therefore it's kofuf. But even though the kefifa indicates an inyan of helem, well, that's a helem al-manas la-hagia el oimek ha-inyan. It's not just a helem from negation. And we saw that Ali Day says the kof pshuta, these pashtas b'yesa, and it's well known that the inyan kof is a Rosh Tevis from the inyan from Keser, and that's what we saw, that was inyan from Eimach Kareem V'Eimach Tochas, which are Mavur B'Negir to Keser. And we saw similarly with the inyan of Komets and Posach. And we mentioned briefly B'Negir to the Kavanas of Tchiyah Shefer, Leideis Inyanim B'Negir to that. So now in Kuf Tzadik Tes, where you and say Yoser al derech Moshel, a Talmud HaYeshiv L'fnei Rabbi, Danase Kenekuda Achas L'Kabel. Al derech it's brought down in the Chosn Maimah, B'Negir to Kol Talmud HaYeshiv L'fnei Rabbi, Ve'in Sivseira Meitveis Moyer, but Moyer is the inyan from Merivas and Bittel, and he brings the Lashon over there, Shehu B'Tachlis HaBitul, that's the Lashon in the famous Maimah, the Lachodeidi. So that Sivseis or Meitveis Moyer, that's the inyan and Akuda Achas, but that's the inyan from Bittul Haloa. It's not just Bittul Stam, but that's a inyan from Kibbutz with Tzimtzum, from Metziusai, Al-Manas, L'Hagia, Oimeka, Pnimiyas, B'divrei Rabbi. לפי ערך הכוח שמצמצם כל עצמיות שלו. In other words, it's not just that he gives away his whole self in order to hear what the Rav says, but he's מצמצם himself. B'chinas kibbutz betachlis. The word kibbutz in Yiddish is kwetschenzach. The inyan forcefully bringing to a bittul. Be inyan atzmusay. Bilti yochel lidus b'menu b'chinas espashtus klal. Kaloshna Gemara de Ayri de Torid lamivla loy polit klal uklal. But the lesson of the Gemara Ayri de Torid lamivla loy polit. But that's going to get to the inyan of blia, that b'shas a certain material makes contact with another material with a charge that should be boiled bolea mimeno. For example, a gush, cham or a gush which enters a hot liquid, a boiling liquid, and then as a blia takes place. So there's also an inyan of a plita from the dover into the hot liquid. There's or whatever it comes into contact with. We say that that's only a later stage. The early and the immediate reaction is blia. And therefore he said, I did it torid lamivla. During the time that it's torid lamivla, then loy polit. In other words, it doesn't work both directions. The bisman, that particular gush or goof is boilea, then it's not poilet. Poilet means to give out, to be maflit and to literally give forth from its own goof. That's what it's been boiled, plus its own inyanim into into the liquid or into the material Savivloi, that's only b'shas the blia has been completed. Therefore, bisman inyan ha-blia, then it's not shy to give anything out. So the Rebbe adds here the words klal uklal. It's not in our inyan. The Talmud is, since he's torid lemivla, his whole inyan is devotion to the divrei harav to be makabel. Not only is he just ibegi as we might use the expression, to be makabel, but he's in a state of kibbutz and bittul kol mavusei almanas la'alois lehidobig be'omek divrei harav. V'yesh memenu b'chinas his pashtus klal da'ira torah mir loy poli klal mizeh atzmoi bo koyach ha'ishpashtusei lamata achacha liyos moken oveya lahashpia ulohoilid haskolis chadoshet. So we see that Dafki HaTalmud Misug Zeh, that he's mamish kenakuda achas lifnei rabbi, but that nakuda achas is not just a bittul, but even shel shlila. There's a bittul and a kibbutz shemetamtzing ruusei almanas lekabel oimeka inyan, and to become a kli lekabel oimek pnimis divrei harav, Dafki b'schuseh and mikoyach. It's later he's able to give over the divrei harav, not only just kamoy shaheim, not only just to even touch on the oimek of the inyan, but he's able to give it over in such a way that he's also moilid b'zeh haskolis chadoshes. And here we see a very interesting point for Chayra. But not just he's able to find a ribuyus pashtus in the zach, but he's able to be moilid haskolis chadoshes. That's what we saw earlier in Ois Kuf Tzadik Ches, that there's a koyach hamoilid b'sikloi. The koyach hamoilid means to produce new inyonim from the moket. So we saw that was also Dafki Alidei, the inyan of Aliyah b'tei oimik ha'inyan b'yoyzer, and that was through the koyach ha'afloah, and that touches off a power within the makabel to be moilid, literally. To give forth new inyonim. Now we have to say not new in the way the famous quip has it that's mamish emes chidushim, because emes chidushim that's all we're looking for. Emes chidushim means this mamish new thing, but new ways of expressing that inyan, which bear in themselves a trace of a new haskalah altogether. In other words, a completely new vista, a new way of looking at that. So Dokum Tois that a Talmud Amiti is not just somebody that he can only give over divrei harav kamoy shaheim, li what you might call ishtatfus koyach sheloi b'toich ha'inyan. Now, if he's a Amiti is a Talmud, he's ad kedikach, he's potter, he's ad kedikach, how do you call it, uile b'toich divrei harav, then he's able to give over that inyan later, even of his chachas. He can actually cause lodas in that inyan. And that's what's written in Mavur in certain places. It says that the emes is a sign that you are makabel mi'arav. But even amiti is that you're able to give over dvorov in your own oisias. And you're not totally in the oisias kamoy shekibalta et. So l'chayra is another inyan always to stick to the oisias harav. So Mavur becoming a kaimes that you must always adhere to the oisias harav. So Islam that is a three inyanim. I've always said you must always adhere to the oisias harav. That's when what is dorush is chazorah. There's an inyan baksirim from chazorah. When you chazor what the Rav said, then you got to say what he said. But you, and that's the inyan of the adherence to the oisias harav. And then, b'vadai, the oisias are pu'el kol pu'loso. The oisias masbiras, the oisias machimois. If the hearers are people that they hear right. Yes, that this is another inyan. To show a Talmud Amiti, a Makabel Amiti, is when he himself is able to make Makabelim that the Rav didn't reach. If it's a time Shia, if it's a time Mekimi or a Tam Gashmi or he's a Tam Shaloi, that the Rav's not able to reach certain Talmidim Shaboilom, then the Talmud is able to make new Talmidim in the sense that he produces new vistas and new ways of understanding, and not only he just brings it out in the Oishis Arav, but he brings it out in his Oishis, and in that Gufa he brings out a new koyach in his Oishis to see, as it were, a new way of saying that Indian, which can be called as Kol HaChadocha. And that's Indian from Lahoili. And therefore, that's the Indian which is, how do you call it, Makarev, Oit Makablim, to Yisrael, because the Talmud Bashgocha Protis reaches certain people that the Oishis Arav may not have been fully moving to them, or they may not have been out of Bisman Ahu, Lefaneach et Oishis Keroi V'Fulo. What he reaches them with another form of Askara is and a Daimler is there. That's all a demon Ba'amar over 80%. It's we mentioned last night by the Fabrengen, we mentioned the famous Rashi in Sector Tainis over there in the Sugya from what the Rebbe's got to see in Lamed Hay. About Yankov Vino Loi Meis. The whole reason the Rebbe said that the Metzias from Torah is that Yankov Vino Loi Meis. Even though the Gemara says, I Chatu Chatayo, Sabtu Sabadayo, Kavru Kavrayo, but the Gemara asks the Kasha B'Pshitas, so Rashi brings over there in the Teretz what the Gemara answers. Rashi brings over there that Rashi says that Afu Pi Shechontu, you have a Sabtu, Nid Mulahem, Avol Chai Hoya. And then later Rashi repeats it in the final Maskana, the Gemara repeats it again. He said, Afu Pi, she also, the Kanalo, Kolzer, Chai Hoya, Toas Vietlam, or Masu Kazer, Chai Hoya. It's, so, a lot of people say, where is it to is so therefore some people come along and say that that pure Rashi in Tainas in certain places is not Rashi. It's not, I mean, even without that difficult Rashi, there's people who say that. They don't say pure because of that Rashi. They Taina. So one of the Maskonas is that it was a Talmud for Rashi, not Rashi himself. So last night by the Fabregan, but two, Levi B'Yayin, I just said no, and if it's Talmud Rashi, it's no Talmud Rashi. Loves them as Rashi's Talmud. Rashi's Talmud is in I almost a Talmud from Rashi. When he said no, he said whether you should be, your Megushim Dikakov should be able to be Mekabel even better than Rashi. Rashi would have been able to get you to be Mekabel. Even it's Talmud Rashi is mine. That's it. I feel Tim Shalima, that's another one of the Rishonim, Vismanahu, Lo Tovlam. They're all Safi Maila, they're all Yidden or somewhere. I mean, all the Yeshua, Beis Medrash Rashi, Vatishus, but they're all, Kedei Le'elam, and Bali Roch HaKodesh V'Kaish. That's the Indian from Moilid Haskoros Chadoshis for the Makablim. Remember, that's a very amazing point. The Rebbe says that that's a Indian from a Talmud Amiti. I mean, every little prat in these drushim is so amazing. You can see how the Rebbe just he puts in the kudas, which they themselves tell you all sorts of other Musari Haskel. The kasher shoymeya o makabel belit simtum bekivutz biatzmei hari u makabel as a seichel. Avol yuchal is pasha baby yisa. Yeah, it's true. Even when he's not Chinukuda Achas, he's not Sif's face of night face Moyer, but the whole beetle of the guns. He hears, how do they say? He sat by for the bringing and the Gehert was stood up, so whatever he said. But he said, Lo Yuchal, nonetheless, Lishpashit Boy B'Yoysa. And that's all lie out there of what we just said, that he's limited to Yoisias. That's to say, he can give it over, b'diuk k'moishu shamad. That he can tell you. And that he can tell a Makabel. More than that, he's not able to be mishpashi with what he heard. Ki'im al yedei tzimtzum v'kivutz kol atzmusoi. Hari hu Makabel es etzem hasichli. V'hay mashin is boreo perekuf lamed te. He said, do the roof what he himself verquetscht, the netzalach and his rooster latata legavi dorav. It's much more than Kuf Lamed Tes. That's already a long time ago we learned Kuf Lamed Tes. But I don't know if you remember, but over there the Rebbe is Masbir that it's totally in the whole Gisha of the Talmud how the Rav relates to, as you might say, his Oiven HaSkola. There was the Rebbe, a Talmud like we just mentioned, that he's Makabel, Eino Chanami, and he heard, and he knows what the Inin is, that's fine. If he asks something and he's Mo'ira, a Shaila, and a Kushia, then he said the Rav will answer him, Kifi Muskole Harishay. He'll answer him like, but the first thing which, if Haptzicharayim, also tells, that's what he'll answer him. He said, but when a Talmud has been Makabitz Etzat, Bittul Gomel is when he asks, then the Rav will be Misake, on the contrary, he will be Poil Etzratzmoy, this Haloah B'toy Hoimet, P'nim Zaseichel, and then the whole beer, the terrace will be Lagami Boiven Acher. So if we look carefully over there, in that chapter, I remember we spoke about it when we learned it, we were marked in the Sinyan, you'll see a phrase occurs over there 2 or 3 times, and that's the difference between the 2 different types of Talmud, Yesh Lema. Over there he says that the Talmud that's Misaki being, and that he's Oimed Bekivutz of a Bittul Gomel is Me'arav, then he gets the Oimed Kavonas out of him. The Rabbi Chazal several times he repeats the word Kavona. Shahein Emes, you can tell that the word Kavona means, what it really means, what the Seichel really means. Oh, Yesh Lema, there's a lot more to it than that. Everything an Emes Rav says, it's got the Seichel, Uimek HaSeichel afila, but then it's got a Kavona, it's got a purpose, it's an aim at a certain meaning to all of the world, and to change things, and to be, how do you call it, Machshir, a ganze Chelik of the world, to Kabbalah, Seichel's there, Almanat, Lifweil, the Kavona, Amidius, from the Meibish. Therefore, the Yesh Lema, that's even from Kavona. Remember the Talmud that he reacted the way we just described here, and he talks about such a Talmud over there. Well, his Indian is that he understands the Sichli. And in the Sichli Gufa, he understands what the Rav said. But his kashi will be in a Sichli from the Zav. And therefore, whatever Seichel happens to fall in the Rav, like the woman, Lo Mezalzel Bezeh, Stam Mezalzel. Aber it's a tiny Ainian Sichli. Oh, but he said the Talmud will ask me, Bittul Gomel El Kavona Seinin. Well, then he gets caught under the terror, but the Rav himself is Misaki Val Terrazeh. And the Rav said, V'eina Meishiv Loi Miyad, Masha Eile B'mus Kavisha. At least they tell us the first, Chap. He doesn't answer here. Because we're talking about the Kavona, we're dealing with the ultimate adequate meaning and the ultimate aim, what we're aiming for. When you get a birra oilam, hachonas oilam, the gilei elakuz, therefore that's a kavona. In kavona, you've got to be mechaven. You can't just down. Even the Rav is not able just to answer mashu b'muskul rishon, because we're dealing with the ultimate. How do they call it? The purpose of things. Well, that's a different idea altogether. Yesh Lema, that's what the Rebbe means here. That kibbutz biatzmai is that the Talmud's not just looking for understanding. He's not just looking for a deeper hezber. He's trying to get is what do we really want here? What is the purpose? What is wanted of him, and Mamela, what is wanted of the world? That's better what is Mavua over there. And therefore he's Mavai over there, the same meaning, that the deeper he gets from the Rav in the Eimaka Inyan, then the more he's able to give over from the Rav, the Ribuya Protim of his pastors, v'chuli. But over there, this whole big emphasis on the concept Kavanah. Yalideze nase kemocha noiveya bo Inyan lahaskil ule his pashe the boy biyesa. He becomes a mocha noiveya, a bursting mocha, almost like a mayon, and something novea means that it bubbles up from the
flows.
Yeah, not only flows, but novea means to come up and burst up from the mocha. That's what the word novea means. It comes out that he himself, a reference here to the famous principle that Siddim used to say, that every chassid has to be a little rebbe. Every chassid's got to be a piece of a rebbe. He's got to do things and give over, the inyanim the way the rebbe would want it. You've got to represent the rebbe. So that's what L'choira is being hinted at here, that he becomes a mocha noveya. He goes back into the mocha in such a way that you can trust him, it's new haskalas, a new inyana, but they're coming from the same mocha as what the Rav had them. This is the Rav had them, the way the Rav had them, so he's getting back to the same basic idea, or the same inyan. But maybe ulai we can even be a little bit more courageous. That's what the Maggid said about Reb Zushi, the famous remark. But the Maggid said when some Mishnagdish Rabbanim came and they asked a Kashi or something in Yerushalmi, and they wanted to hear what the Maggid would say about it, or what his Talmidim would say about it. And they walked into the Beis HaMedrash, and they asked some of these big Talmidim who were there, and somebody, so Rav Zushi happened to be there. And Rav Zushi, they explained to him what the Kashi is. So they'd heard that he was like they'd made a bit of research into who these Talmidim were, and they'd heard that he was like the more passionate of all. They thought he was like the more he was a Chosid Muflag, but he was sort of more for the Pashtonim. So they sort of they wanted to go for the bigger artillery. They want to eventually get into the Maggid with the Kashi. So they sort of avoided. He was matzi by him that they should tell him what is the cashier. And so then he went into a side room. When he heard the cashier, he went into a side room. Reb Zusha, he just wept in front of the Avish, and he said, Zusha, who isn't, was it the tenant? So then he came out and he told these guys, this unbelievable beer. It was a Yerushalmi, he told them this unbelievable beer, just absolutely thunderstruck. They couldn't believe it, because it was just nika, dvorim amitim, emes yoyra darkoi. So eventually they got into the Maggid and they said, they've already got the teretz. But they're very surprised that they heard it from this Rav Zusha, and who knows what these other Talmidim must be like if the more simple Talmid, is able to answer Azam in Terah. So the Maggid said, Zushia. Oh yeah, so one of them said, why don't take and where did he take Azam Terah? So the Maggid said, picked with the Yerushalmi or Tiskinuma, Zushia Tiskinuma. Just where the Yerushalmi got it from, so she got it from the same place. In other words, and as the Talmud comes back, he gets from the same, and he's eating out of the same soup plate. That's what the Rebbe means. That they say he becomes a mocha noiveya. That's a very remarkable statement for India. That means a bubbling, how do you call it, mayo. Lahaskil ulishpashit boibe yabiyoisa. So, k'moy Inyan ha'afloa shenisbor liyah perikut tzadik zayin. Masha uila bi'ilu acha ilui b'ha'inyan, and that's the Nesinas Koyach. Davkim mizeh comes this Koyach HaMoed. But we saw that was in the Etzem Koyach of Haloah, and the Etzim Koyach taking, I think, Malachatchila, Boifan Naila, and Boifan Shalashota, and then going up higher and higher. So the Rebbe says, no, Kamoy Kain Yuvan, Boifan Abeis. And then we brought in Kuf Tzadik Zayin itself, we brought the whole difference between Choref and Machsher, and Mosukan, and Mosul. And we pointed out that the Inyan from the Choref and Machsher, that ability to ask kashas is the same idea. It's the same principle of Ilui Ache Ilui in the Afloa. Just that we saw that there's a certain, what you might call, spalbulus occurs in the Choref Machsher, that Miribu Matzia Stirish Badora, he tends to lose these battles of the bureau of the Inyan. And yes, but however, in the Maskana from that Gufa, we said that when he combines that Choref Machsher together with traces of the Masaku Motzim, then he becomes, he has the mila of this Ilui Bederekushia and Pulpul, but he's also got the mila of bringing it into Amaskana. So it could be that that's what the Rebbe means. That's the how it is outside of Mila Shaboy. Yum Bevan Abeis and his Burliel, Shom, Shazel, Kamoya Oimed al Dvar Seichel, Usfara, Misaki Boy. He's not in a hurry to reach Amaskana. On the contrary, he reaches the opposite. He reaches Kashia. Mamik Boy, Bechol Koyach Sikloi, Ad Shiile Bazeh, Kama Kushias, Vikiruchim, Anikoim Pilpol. In other words, he's mafalful bedover, what he has a cash in the hand, but then he's choizer or machsher ali, yeah? Shezo helem acha helem. The kashias are like aliyahs, they're helem b'derech aliyah, not helem b'derech helem mamish. She'acha shemetara it's choizer or machsher. V'chol shemagia le'oim ko yeser ari hu mufla, and therefore eino mish yasheiv. He's not able to find a Yishuv Bedorah because the Hafloa is how do you call it, Bahad Gosha. In other words, the Tekushi is the Hafloa, and as the Hafloa tends to pause in its own Inyan, Beli Yerida, and the ultimate purpose is adopted to be Yered Lamata, and that's the Inyan of Masako or Mosa. So therefore, yes, like murder, that's what the Rebbe means now. That's an expression in the Gemara that becomes broadened for him, the whole thing. In other words, that he understands the ultimate answer, the ultimate teretz, and the ultimate kavana as we are being. So, yesh lemad, with that the Rebbe is taking into account how he reached the maskan of the beer in the Soifan Abeis, what that is that you're also able to bring from the Yishasus, so the Rubi Akushiyas, you're able to bring them down into a Bechozot into a maskana, and not just to remain with the Yishashus and the Kashiyas. He said, Dafki Ravke Leishmaitet Achachach, Kashiyasku Bos Foris Chadosis Rabbis, and Ein Shir Lamata. Now notice all these Lashonis, it's very amazing. Every time he gets into it, he says, Ad Ein Shir, Ad Bli Gvul, and all sorts of Massive Moki and Oveya. Yeah, boy beyoizlish, pasha beyoiser. There's always a few Lashonis on the Dofim here, like adjectives pronouns, but they sort of stress just how great this koyach hayirida is. So we can see we mean mamish b'pur mamish here. We don't just mean that the guy he has a bit more of a slightly better understanding than Pliny, but he really has the Inyan, and he becomes what you might call a living advertisement of what he heard from the Rebbe, in such a way that those who take the advertisement, they get a new view according to their limitations of the whole Inyan, and they come to really appreciate what it's all about. So we have to say that there are and there have been solche Chassidim, solche Talmidim, but they've helped promote these Inyanim. And since they're coming home on the bus last night, I was told a couple of the Bochum about Rabbi Paritcher. They asked me to tell them some stories about Rabbi Paritcher. So we find that he was one of the few people that wrote Maimonides Chassidus. And it's interesting that someone said even when he was already quite an elderly man, I mean, not that someone said the little porridge said, that someone said he demanded of him that he used to go around Russia, months at a time, to all these little yeshuvim. And he used to come into, he would spend Shabbos there, and he would, he would sort the Zonas accounts of Maimon Chassidus. He would do it before Shabbos came in. And then he would, that would took a long time, they used to have him late. And then he would, the next day he would, develop on it, and give over Bunim, and then by Riven, call Riven, they'd go over it again, or he would say it again, or he'd say something else, right? I got to Shabbos, had he called Shabbos from Chassidus with this Rabbi.
His own Chassidus, his own Chassidus of the Rebbe's
his own Chassidus, the Rebbe's Mama, the Bittel Rebbe, so that don't come to us, that you had a man that he was able to bring down these Maimorim even to what they call, the Yishuv Nichas, they used to call it. The simple Yidden, and the stories about how they reacted to what Rabbi said to them. So here we see a Yid that he was an unbelievable masculine. He was, a very big involvement right here, and yet nonetheless he was able to go around and give all this over and make it meaningful to all sorts of people that weren't be'erach, even to the Pashtus Advarim. He sort of made it meaningful to them, as all the Sipurim indicate, and he was very successful as a tremendous ambassador of the whole Chassidus to all these people. Oid, Chassidim that rely on a local Katmakirim, like some Bishmam, over the world, Chassidim like this. They had this, they'd been cleaner, this union of spreading, and that was the big Mivchoim B'Yom Yom. That was killed the big Drisha, the Rabbeim, that whoever had this, or whoever been cleaner, this ability, then he must come forth and show himself. They wanted very much to spread the union of Chassidus to the simple appreciator, what you might call to the beginner, to somebody just beginning. So I mean, what the Rebbe says here, there were people like this. It's not just a sort of an amazing, like dream-like document here. That already people that got this ability to be Yoyer and Adler, but there were actually people like this. They were able to, because of the image of their Tvisa Bahadora, whether it be Deratub or Machatchila, that's the way their minds work, that they were able to give over. I mean, if we take it, as I eat like a Malcolm Goldschmidt told himself, I mean, he had this amazing ability to make things sound very sensible. And the Rebbe said he should give these things on the radio. He gave these shurim on the radio for tens of years, about 20 years. There was a Shir and Tanya on the radio, on the secular radio. And the Sefer Biri Aranag is up to about Perik Tesvav. So, very well holding now in the Chittas. That's about as far as you got. But the Shurim, or that's as far as they got written down. But I mean, it was just a dogma of a person who had the ability to reach a huge public, and the station wouldn't have kept it going had they not seen that there was a good feedback. You don't keep a thing on the radio if you don't get a feedback that people are listening to it. Even in those days, they had their ways of knowing if people were listening. Nowadays, with the computers, they can know almost how many people are actually listening. It's not all that far away from our experience. People misug zeh, that they had such a yigia and a chusha yigia that they were able to manage to bring things down. I don't know if it was Mokeh Hanoveya, with all these Lashanas that we see here. Adimin Lazer al-Choponim, and people like Rabbi Parja and Isaac Homela and other great Chassidim, they were gifted with this ability.
Hillel was told to be a Batzal.
Huh?
He was the one told to be a Batzal. Jehovah Chassidus, even if it means being Batzal, an onion.
Ben Batzal?
A Batzal, an onion.
Oh, right. Well, I'm not sure if that was Rav Hillel. I'm not sure. I once said it was Rav Hillel. I think there's as far as some people say it was him. But there was once a chassid who had a similar task. He used to go around chazering the chassidus to the simple Yidden. And he came in with a time to the middle of Rebbe that when he does it and he's matzlich, he gets yeshes. He comes over good. And, the famous thing with the Frierdiker Rebbe said, as a Zochter good, so that's why our Rebbe he can have his arm beautiful. So this Chassid thought he'd be on a good horse, you know. He'd show the Rebbe how you know, much of an honor he is and how bottle he is. He doesn't want to have any yes, he doesn't want to destroy the Indian and this and this. And but neither Rebbe. So the middle Rebbe said, for dir so werden a Chibule. Chassidus als the Chassid. I don't care what happens to you, but you're going to say the Chassid. So, you know, there's no doubt about it that there were, and you know, maybe not all that far from our time, Chassidim, that they fitted, at least generally, this whole thing that we see here. I mean, it's important that we see that these things shouldn't feel like some wondrous document, you know, that we need to know there is such a Indian, but we can point in the development of Chassidim to certain inyanim which seem to indicate it. I'm sorry. Yeah. The hoya mekabel es asegel b'chitzoyni yusay levad hoya hagbara beish pashtes. There would be a limit as to how far it could derive outwards for the mekablim. Rak davke el dei helem hakoidem shemagia loim chaseichol. V'hainu shalidei helem magia leoim koi b'yoser. V'hainu shemagia leidei zelem chinas oimek shuhu b'chinas chodosh. You know, so all the way through this Maimorim for many pages now, way back into that period we mentioned, and even before, the Rebbe's been talking about Ur Chodosh. Have you noticed? He says the holy name is Lahamshik, no Maila Ur Chodosh, Ur Chodosh, and Ur Chodosh. And they explain that this is all part of the general view of that whole concept. In other words, that there are inyonim which even Lamaila Mishtausas and Mamishin Makifim Amiti, but they're not called Ur Chodosh. They've all been there. They're all already for even Shogiloi. And then there's a new Indian that's never been before. And that's a pillar. Give a cook from that Indian from Ur Chodosh. Well, that comes Dafki when you're unsettled. Dafki when you don't take things Kamosha Aim Afilu Ba'imek Harogel Shalehem. Yeah, even when you've got the Aimek, you say, no, this is, you know, we want Moshe now, we want more now, we don't want it the way it is. And remember, you come to a new vista, a new type of Gilui that David's never given. And remember, the Neshama is also Ador Eloki. She's a Gilui Eloki. And you can gain from your Neshama things that she's never given before. It's something completely a new in it. It's a pillar. It's mamish a pillar. When you think about that lotion, you have a Hainu Shemagia Leizel B'chinas He makes you B'chinas Ur Chodosh. How do you do that? Precisely, it looks like a negative thing. That's a pillar. That the more the Rebbe gets into this Indian, the more he sort of reaches. The first way he says, you know, there's a guy that takes about half shot. Then he gets onto a maksheh. Now he's got onto a Talmud. Doesn't ask any kashas even. Goodness, he just gives away his whole self. And he just shows that he wants to reach Elohim, and he wants to know what is the kavanah, as the lesson is over there, and he's just prepared to, how he could give himself away completely and devote himself completely. Then he gets to Inyanim, which you know he B'Klau didn't hear when he heard it from the Rav, even with the Yoimek and even with the Ishtadlers, or when he makes the emissary Ishtadlers to really get to the kavanah Amitis. We saw that's the lesson over there. Then he comes with a new revelation that he never heard that before. In other words, that particular vista in the Divrei Harav has not been yet. I mean, the Rav knows it. The Rav had it. But nobody's quite chopped that particular angle. Ad Khan. That's what I'm saying.
If the Rav had it, then why is it called Chadash?
Eh?
If the Rav had it, so why is it called something new?
No, it's like Avihim. It's a new thing. We're talking about him. Right? He gets to the Yoimek, he gets to a Ur Chodosh. But Ulai, you got a point. I mean, I didn't cancel out when I was thinking about this. It could be that you have a point. Ulai yesh lema, that this is a reference to what David HaMelech said, to mitalmidai yosher mikulam, that there's even in the power of the Talmud to be machadish ha'inyan, that even, Kaviyochel, the Rav, didn't have that mamish begolo, even though we have to say it's kolo bezu even b'direi Rav, but mamish yesh lema. I mean, I'm prepared to be makabel that ha'ora. I'm prepared to be makabel that. I always caution, but yesh lema, that there is such an inyan that's mitalmidai yosher mikulam. Particularly, we're talking here about somebody that he's got a chush apil for. Oh, now look at that. It says, "V'ayin shalideya elam magila eim kebiyesa, v'ayin shemagila elam p'chinas eim akshu p'chinas chodosh." So I mean, I'm prepared to suggest the possibility of what you suggest, even though, it's maybe. It's like the old thing that they say in Tanya. Even you might say something that's a little bit, soiter mi'ayemes, but since you meant with that, a good thing, you meant avodah dikazah, then, it's mutter. So he said, Tia ish pashtas, oh, look at this. Tia ish pashtas b'chinas bli gvul. Look at that. Bli gvul. That's a pure play. Now that, until he said that word chodosh, he hasn't used the word bli gvul. He's been saying Novea, B'yoser, his pashtas gedoyla, this, that. But when he touched that word chodosh, then he says this pashtas is bli gvul. So something new, an emes chiddush, not cholila, gemachte chiddushim, not chas v'solim, pakrochane chiddushim, but an emes chiddushim, bli gvul. You touch on to the fact that who gave you the Torah? The Eibush gave you the Torah. And the Eibush is bli gvul. The tzaddikim doimim l'boiram. You got that from an emes Rav. And Mamela does a bli gvul, but you don't have bli gvul over there. Hello? You don't have the word bli gvul over there?
No, we didn't.
I did.
I was looking at something else.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Is Mamela lefi zeh kom toyes, and this is mamish a losh nifla. You come into a whole new world. You find a whole new vista with this Nichayas. I was telling the guys last night about it for bringing. On Motzei Shabbos, I had a little get-together with a few guys in B'nai Brak. It was short. A little bit because of the Tata, they just came in and said, here we are. So what am I going to do is throw them out of the house? So we sat and we bring a bit. We covered Tavis. Just before that, I looked up a Sikha from Rabban, and I saw a piece b'fnim, and then a ha'ora from the Rabban. I'm telling him, der ha'ora is nicht, it's chone sein, b'derech ha'teva. I firmly believe, the derech ha'teva, kein Mensch, ich kann sagen, als Zustand, als Buim, als in Sikha, als Geschmack. So saying, it's so obvious in a way, the whole thing. It's a story from the Alter Rebbe to some of what, the whole meaning we find the Alter Rebbe's Torah, and what we find in some of what when they get to the Evan Poshet, we come to Evan Poshet to Alter Rebbe and the chapters. Unbelievable, the whole thing, I just was beaming and steaming. That's it, and I said, Yechia Melech HaMashiach. I said those words, even though there's nobody else in the room at the time. Like, this can't be at all. Nicht b'derech ha'teva. That's what they're. But there's a certain, sometimes, it's, I mean, that's how you say, that's what I can't say, but it's the Rebbe. But this year, Chodosh. So when you touch Chadash, then it's just pretty cool. It's just like pincers of anything anyway. It just goes all over the Torah and pulls out anywhere, anytime, it'll just pull out. So wherever Mikni Rav do it, here's that I was talking about the Alter Rebbe. That's what I just thought, who would possibly dream of it? That's what I think. That word bli gvul occurs after the word chodosh. I mean, everything here is betatlas adiyot. I mean, we're not even touching on any of the diukim, how much more you know, something that jumps out and, you know, obviously hits you in the eye. I mean, nimmt moving because there. לפי כוח האפלואה וירידה, הגם שאין הפוכים זה מזה, מכל מוקים הרי זה הו והו תניו, שעל ידי האפלואה דווקא, על ידי זה הוא דווקא הירידה, והירידה הוא לפי אבן האלוה, או האפלואה. הגם שאין המזכר האור המופלא, דהיינו פינס העמק, מכל מוקים לפי אבן האפלואה, כמו שמגיע בזה, ובאפלואה זה העניין, בייסה, So the Rebbe says clearly, different targets. It could be he doesn't reach the whole shleimus afloah that somebody else does. Yeah, it's called chad b'fum, as you might say, from shuri delay. Yeah, however, but according to what he reached in the afloah, that's what he did. But if he reaches, if he's chodos, if he reaches the immediate afloah and the immediate oiva, then there's no whole spot. It'll just go adding sof. אבל הפונים, שכל אחד לפי עניון האלה. Here we see another chiddush, that from a thing which looks to be absolute negation and bittul, from that there comes stuff here, the amitis ha'aloha. In other words, the more you make yourself an absolute botel, and the more you stretch yourself for keywords, and the more you just absolutely uis, then the more that's called afloah, the more you just shoot up into the amitis hakavona. But that's a chiddush gadol in this whole voice. But Ad Kam we haven't seen it. At the beginning we started with the guy in Chatilah, he's got a push in afloah, and he takes things like a tchila that way. You know, that's kind of like a blessed individual, you know, right from the beginning. Then we see a chorif u'machshayin, which is Fred catches, and he's got to be find a chavayim toy. He's got to get down to the arena, you know, different inyonim b'dor. Now we see a whole new idea. The mention mamish matzagornish. He doesn't ask any kasha. He doesn't go on a chatchila b'afshota. He just sits with absolute bittul mamish fagornish, etzim v'husay, with the bakosha and the kavod that he wants to know. What is up to the Rav? Not to stam. Oh, don't. And then he can reach any of an age. So that's yesh loima, something that hasn't been mentioned that time. That's tafki. So maybe this whole last hours before the end of the Maimah is the rumors to an emes hachos. You know, before we're talking about different forms of askala, different blessed individuals and blessed powers and koyches. Ain't no chalavi that's there in the koyach haseichel. Here yesh loima, this whole little piece. The Rebbe is showing what he called the unlimited aspect of an emes hachos, a Talmud Amidi, but his whole Indian is bittul of a kibbutz, atzmi al manas, to reach the uimek hakavona. That's why he says ayin perek kuf lamed, because you got to pick up over there the nuance. And then if you put it all together, then you can see what he's talking about. Kain yesh lema b'derech. Now he says another thing. ויש לפי האבן כזה, ובחינס יריד רבייס פסטס. ובהכרח שיש בזה גם מהאור המופלא, מאחר שעל ידי זה הוא דווקא היריד רבייס פסטס. In other words, what makes the possibility to go down, that's the Ur Mufla. So what do you want to tell me, that the Ur Mufla will just force everything down, that it'll stay in its own ivory tower? That since the koyach hafloah is that which pushes everything down, and the koyach in the emes koyach hagir b'teich ha'imek, well, that's what's giving the power to go down. And therefore, in all those pratim, it must be at least recognizable. Yeah, what sort of imek is pushing all this out? So that's just the old expression. Yeah, that the more profound something is, the more simple it sounds. You know, in other words, that a person can see, if he's only got a little bit of a koyach hachush, you know, he can see the oimek in a thing, even though it makes good sense to him. But he can see the tremendous oimek which is in there. Even though the biur, the oimek, and the reich of the oimek doesn't come out, but it's there in a form of appearance, I would say, if not gilui, but it's there, and it's nikah in the detail. That's also, I mean, he's meant to, but that's also like a final maskana in that. Now says the Rebbe, that's why Chochma is called Chochma. Koyach ma Yeah, like you bring some Perigimel and Tanya, the Inyan. The koyach shebechokma, the Inyan from koyach, ubechinus aiskavusa elabina. In other words, that she's already come down into a certain readiness to enter the realm of Seichel Vaskola. And that's not the immediate sin of Chokma. Chokma is a Messinas koyach, and a beginning of such a Inyan, but it's not mamish, the Inyan of Vasoga, and therefore that's only the koyach. And it's well known, the word koyach means something limited, specific, which has been miskale almanas, lifo is the Inyan. So that's what koyach means. Koyach means a specific, limited thing, which has a certain pool to carry out. And therefore, that means our Chokma is already going down into a readiness to enter the Inyan of, how do you call it, of understanding. Ubrinus ma, who is tavkusa per kesem. I will know the word, his tavkusa. The Inyan from tevekus, cleavage, something which is an absolute type of thing. That she's really part of kesem. Not just, that's a gilui of kesem, or a trace of kesem. Oh, that comes, mitzad her is tevekus in kesem. Yedua, says the Rebbe, the Chokma ubchinas nakuda. Whatever you talk, wherever you'll find Chokma, it's a nakuda. However, yesh b'zeh beis madregas. It's well known that in the nakuda gufa there are two madregas. O aleph mashi yisod abba. It's well known that the nakuda saskola is called in many places yisod shebachokma. What yisod is already the ashpoya. That's how it's getting ready to go over into bina. He said ubchinas nakuda, but that's the ashpoya elabina. Ukamoi nakuda saskola. Oh, he just said that's all. The Klalasin. I mean, in that Kufa, there are different madregas. Can you do it? Earlier in this Hemshire, he talks about it. Well, but if we talk in a Klalastik away, the Nakuda is Yisod Abba. The Inyan from Ashpoya to the Bina. Or Beis Pechinus Chachma, he said, I'm sorry, V'habeis, so, that's the Inyan from Yisod. Pechinus Chachma Shebechachma. The second one is the Inyan from Chokma Shebechokma, or Keser Shebechokma. In other words, either the Etzem of Chokma Gufa, or Keser, how it is in Chokma, not Chokma Shebekeser, Keser Shebechokma. Shehi Bechinas Nakuda also, but the Aziras Gamor Lekabo Mi Bechinas HaKeser. There's one known expression, the Zohar Kodesh, about the Nakuda, the Aziras Gamor, that she makes herself small. Well, that's a Inyan from Bittul and Kibbutz Be'etzem HaMauz. Your Nekudas HaSkola, well, that's already not a Inyan from Aziras Gamor, that's already an approach towards a Sikli. But because it's still too clodious for the Koyach HaSikli, it therefore remains a Nekuda. But the Nekuda, how Chokma approaches, and this Dovuk in Keser, well, that's called Aziras Gamor. That she herself causes herself to lose herself. In other words, that's the bittul of the Makabu, how he gives himself away entirely. That's called Kesher Shebechokma, or Chokma Shebechokma. He said, "V'zeh b'chinas Pele Shebechokma, ba'alo yisor lakabu mibchinas haKeser." That's a Inyan from Aliyah and a Devekes in the Inyan of Keser. Shekol sha'aliyah hi b'yoser alidei zehu amshocha v'yerida b'yoser. In other words, the more that Aliyah and the Devekes in the Inyan from Keser, the more will be that the Nekudas HaSkola is able to go down. You read a Gedolah v'nifloa l'mata l'mata. And won't just remain in certain Inyanim and Bina, but it will be clear all the Koyachas that go out into Dibur and out into Ashpoya, b'ribu Inyanim. Oh, Kamai Moisha. Oh, that's it. We notice in these Drushim, every now and then, we reach a maskana to get all sorts of Kival Kinyonim. Also, the Rebbe says, how does it Moshe about? We had this before. We even spoke about it. All of a sudden, how does it Moshe? So, I mean, you mean to tell me that these Drushim, the Rebbe didn't talk about themselves? He said, Ukamoi Moshe, Shahoya B'chinas HaChochma, Harihoya Kvad Peh, Yellow Gabi Teresh Bachol, the Parsha Yisashavua, last Parsha, this Parsha. And he aroused spots out. He's still trying this week's parsha. Moishe Rabbeinu. The Rebbe ain't a because of that Tvekas in Keser and that Aliyah in the scholars in the Koyach HaChochma in the Union. Well, that's the beetle of Chochma, not the Siklish of Chochma. That's the Azirus Gamosh of Chochma. Then he said, ain't no Chanami, that's Quad Peh Quad. Yeah, Loshen, Lagabi Torah should be out Peh. In other words, there's got to be a whole Indian in Torah, it's got to come out in the mouth. Moishe Rabbeinu said, I've gone up, what do you want of me? How am I going to come down now? It's a Zera Shvera Indian. So the Rebbe said, yeah, ain't no Chanami, I have to be with you. In other words, I've got to do that as well. I've got to help that happen because your Aliyah is so emes that it's not going to happen, stop. But it's got to happen. Torah Davkin Yisrape. The Eibishter, yeah, healed him. In other words, that the Eibishter made it possible for the air to come out. Rashi brings it. Yeah, Dvarim. I should Diber Moshe. So Rashi says, Mapirus, the whole Sefer Dvarim, all these Dvarim should Diber Moshe. Moshe said he doesn't talk. He can't talk. It's hard for him. Rashi brings out Shas Matan Torah Nisrape Moshe Rabbeinu. Telafi Sha'oz Hoyam B'chinas HaBitul B'Yoisa Sha'ol El Elokim B'chinas Elam HaAtzmi. Here we touch Elokim in a sense of Helem L'Gavi D'Atzmi, not just Helem as a even Helem in order to bring about Nivroim, but it's well known that the word Elokim can indicate Kavavuim L'Kutei Torah in Pashon in Torah. There's a even Elokim, well that's a Helem HaAtzmi. Like a Meshkos Mochi Mache Ali Dezeh Davkin Nisrape. Yeah, Liyah is beginning to read about Mshach. In other words, here the Rebbe's Machali said that it's all the Barabatim, it's all the Eibishter and Moshe Rabbeinu. And in Moshe Rabbeinu Gufa, this is the Eibishter. In other words, the Eibach Hanami. Even Moshe Rabbeinu with all his unbelievable gifts and Kishrenas, to come from that Hillam Shebekesa into all the talk, and eventually to be the Moki of Torah Shebal Peh. Because he used to teach, he used to come down and teach all the guys, all the host trying to say the Kabbalah, which Rashi also brings down there. How did Moshe Rabbeinu do that? The Eibishter did it for him. Yeah, once he got up in the he was like, yes, the Eibishter, oh, you're already here. We'll find you the way to go down, and we have to find. But the Eibishter himself healed him at Mount. Here the Rebbe is saying that a Rebbe is Gura Moyam Tikazan. A Rebbe is a man, but once he's gone up there, he can just say goodbye to you guys. He's up there in the Helm Chachma. Where's up to say, he's got everything to do with you guys. Keine Sorgen, it's the Eibishter. The Eibishter said, no, that's not what we want about Moshe. He's got to come down. He's got to ganz Indian, Bli.
He said that Freddie Grib was fat there at the end.
Yeah. But yes, none of the Zalemas at all, the Rebbeim were not necessarily stammer, they weren't necessarily Mamish Kvad Peh. How are they going to come bring all this down? How are they going to get up there? They get up there, how are they going to get up there? It's become this wonderful, man. The Eibishter just get up there. There's a little group of the Eibishter. Same with the Rebbe. The Rebbe was Mitzad Chunais. After he was a hidden person. He called him that. He once said that he was a Seina Askan. He didn't like Askan. He had no Chushna. And the biggest Askan to was the. If you look at all those letters, after he took over, before he actually took over the Messiahs, if you look in those letters about the when he was the Rosh Vada, what was it called, the Vada Poyel of Merchas Linyoni Shino. See all these the things that the Rebbe was involved in, the printing, wasn't doing that, and getting this one to write. Und das all the Yonim who brought sending out little pamphlets and getting little things done. The whole crew of Kedusha, it was all free to get read the writing, but the whole crew was the Rebbe, also the Rebbe. They claimed some of the articles of the Rebbe. told him, he said he hated us guys. He couldn't do it. The States, they used to worry about, they used to present us. So there we are, my guys. All we got to do is listen to Moshe. They say, Moshe, you know it's the word Moshe, just Moshe Rabbeinu. And he called it, you know, our fraternity. He said, well, it's up to them. You know, Carol to the Moshe, that's it. Take it from here now. For Hashem, I mean, the world's supposed to begin to wake up. A lot of things happen. I can't go now, I've got to see a book now. Or it's just pretty place.
But just say, it doesn't seem a good example of Bittul Atzmi of Moshe.
Huh?
It doesn't seem to be a good example of Bittul Atzmi of Moshe because everyone was misrapeh. Why does it have to bring this example? Everyone's on the same level.
Yeah, but what it means is that everybody was misrapeh more in the sense of a refuah. This is not the sense of Moshe Rabbeinu was, he needed a refuah. He wasn't able to bring down certain young. So the Eibishter made, for the sake of the ganze Olam, the ganze future, the whole universe, the Eibishter made that this happen. That he would be able to be exactly the opposite. Not that he would just be able to use his push and dibur way in Haroyo, but he'd be able to come down there, he'd be unbelievable. And that's all Teresh Shabbat. As far as people angles and so on. So it's not just a Ayin and a Refuah, it's like a Tikkun, Otzum, and all, that's it.